we're very happy to have voters come out and listen to their prospective government leaders and make some decisions. As we like to say at League of Women Voters, your vote is your voice. And so we want everybody to be able to express through their vote, their voice and their wishes in an election. And this is a good way for us to educate ourselves and to educate the community. We're very happy to have UPS as our co-sponsors this evening, and they are at this same time live streaming this candidate forum, so we'll have a much wider audience through the live stream on UPS, which we're very excited about. And so without any further ado, our first hour and a half or so will be our county candidates for the position of county clerk, which is now a separate position from clerk auditor, so it should be very interesting to hear their ideas about how that configuration might work. And our host for this evening is Tom Williams, and he will be introduced by my leadership team person on our League of Women Voters Cache Valley, Kendra.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks to those of you all joining us online at upr.org. If anyone has any questions tonight, we most likely will be able to take questions from the audience, so please look forward to that. As she said, my name is Kendra. I am the spokesperson for the Cache Valley League of Women Voters, and we're glad that you're here. However, unlike last year, thankfully this year I don't have to be your moderator for the evening. So I am going to hand it over to Tom Williams from UPR. Many of you probably already recognize his voice. He has been with UPR full-time since 1996, and what I got from their website is that he is interested in just about everything and loves to engage people in conversation. So I would say that makes him a great moderator for the evening. So I will hand it off to him, and thanks for being here.
Well, thanks everybody for being here. As they said, I'm with Utah Public Radio. We're owned and operated by Utah State University. We broadcast statewide, and as I like to say, worldwide through our app and through upr.org. So I'm happy to be here. I always admire folks who put themselves up for public service, so thank you to our candidates very much. We need good people in these offices, and so thank you for doing this, and thank you for coming and presenting your views to the public. That's an important part of this process. So we appreciate the League of Women Voters of Cache Valley, and Utah Public Radio is pleased to be co-presenting this candidate forum. We'll have approximately an hour for candidates for county offices, then we'll have a brief break, about a 10-minute break. Then we'll bring on some candidates for statewide or state offices, representatives and senators, and the like. So here's how things will go. We'll be posing the same question to each candidate in most cases. These were solicited in advance from constituents, so these are the voters. And if we have time, at the end of each panel, we'll open it up for questions from the audience. I'd love to do that if there's time. So candidates could take questions in turn, and with 2 minutes to answer each question. So I believe we have a timekeeper in the back. You're right there. Okay, you're in the front row. So candidates, watch that, and if you go too much over time, I'll let you know in a mildly scolding manner, but not too bad. And if you go way over time, our tech person will just fade your mic off. We want to, get through all the questions and hopefully have some time for questions from the audience at the end. So coming up on the stage right now, candidates for Cache County Clerk. The incumbent Bryson Behm. Let's see, to your audience's left, let's give him a hand. And his challenger, David Gillie, to our audience's right. Let's give him a hand. Yeah. We also have, as a part of this panel, a candidate for county council seat number 2, Allison Gillie, who could not be with us tonight, but who sent her answers by email. So I'll just be reading her answers, and that'll in that way she can participate in the panel. So let's get underway. So Bryson Behm, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Oh, can you hear me? All good? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Bryson Behm. I am the current Cache County Clerk Auditor. Previous to this, I was the Chief Deputy Clerk Auditor for the county. I've been born and raised here in Logan my entire life, and I've loved it. I went to high school just a block south of here at Logan High. I went to Utah State University. I went to Ellis Elementary. So this is like my neighborhood. So it's just really cool to be here. I ran the last 4 elections, minus the 2023 municipal election cycle. I love elections. I'm a big election nerd. It's kind of awesome being with the League of Women Voters here. It's August 26th. It's the anniversary of when the 19th Amendment was first not ratified, but put into place. So it's really exciting to be here today. And I'm excited to listen to everyone's questions and, talk about election integrity, election security, and what exactly the county clerk does.
All right, thank you. Same question to David Gillie. Please introduce yourself.
I'm David R. Gillie. I always insist on the R because I'm named after
I
someone.
left that out, sorry. Yeah.
Well, that's okay. The man who baptized my mother was James Reed, and he changed my life and a whole lot of other lives, so I honor him with that. I was born in Salt Lake, but I'm not really that much of a Utahn. I've lived here several times off and on growing up. I've just spent 30 years on the coasts with the Navy and got addicted to green. And when I never thought I'd retire to Utah, my wife died, and I met my second wife, of all places, in Utah. So here I am. And if you're going to retire in Utah, I suggest this valley because it's a lot greener than the Wasatch Front, which was my only introduction to Utah previously. Father of 8 kids, 1 by my deceased wife and 1 adopted daughter by my wife Lillian, and 6 stepchildren and 6.5 grandchildren. I'm passionate about civics. I'm the first American in my family. I've lectured on civics in 10 states, occasionally as a side to my Navy career. I've never run for public office. There's an act called the Hatch Act, which is actually very prudent, which forbids someone in uniform from seeking public elective office. But since I've retired, I've been quite active in that sphere, and here I am running for county clerk. The thing that drives me most to this, there are several things the county clerk does, as you know, and only one of them is elections, but that's very, very important, and that's what drives me on this. When I moved to this valley, I was very dismayed to see what I call pretend elections, and I'll expand on that later. And it's my ambition to, as county clerk, to administer the law as it is, at the same time try to persuade people to move it back to something much more simple and much more direct and participatory and much more secure.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to question number 2. We'll start with Bryson Behm again. Why are you running for this office, in this case, Cache County Clerk?
The reason why I'm running for Cache County Clerk is back about this time last year, I left to explore different opportunities. I used to be the Chief Deputy Clerk here, and that upcoming election cycle in 2023, come to find out that current clerk at that time, 31 things were found by the Lieutenant Governor's office that either it was against the law or is against ethical procedures when it comes to election integrity and election security. I decided to run because I know how to secure elections. I have done it, and I currently am doing it. We just finished the June primary and talked to the Lieutenant Governor's office, and they said we blew them out of the water about how bad it was before and how we came in and cleaned it up. Some of those things that we did clean up was there was a lack of chain of custody. What I mean by chain of custody is that no one knew where the ballots were going and if the ballots were counted and if they were the correct ballots being counted. As well as making sure that all of our machines were audited correctly. The previous administration, the county clerk's office, did not do that, and they tried to hide it and forged a document saying that they did. So what I want is to focus on elections, securing them, and running elections how they should be. I'm currently doing that. We have, we're mailing in ballots in a couple weeks here for the general election, and we're really excited for doing that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Same question to David R. Gillie. Why are you running for this office?
As I intimated before, several things interest me, but the chief motivator for me is elections. And as I conceive it, and as we've done it for thousands of years, we are Western civilization, and as this country has done it for 250 years, it's relatively simple. And it's my deep conviction that you and I owe each other at the deepest level as fellow citizens a real election, and I define that as the blue, gold standard blue ribbon in our precincts on the same day at the same time with members of our precincts whom we know on paper ballots, everyone wanting to observing both the casting, the canvassing, and the tallying and the reporting. That's not both, is it? That's 4 things. Sorry about that. Am I about to a minute? I want to point out just an object lesson, how easy that is. I've brought with me the first election law of the provisional state of Deseret. It's 3 1/3 pages. Very simple, very straightforward, and absolutely secure. The very first law of the territory of Utah, a few years after, in the wake of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, this became United States territory. We had a territorial governor and assembly. This is the first election law of the territory of Utah. And as you know, it took Utah almost 50 years to get statehood, but when it did, the Enabling Act, Section 119, carried over the territorial election law as now the election law of Utah State. My point is it's very easy to be absolutely secure and to give each other the confidence and self-respect and respect for each other that we owe. This is our current. Okay.
All right, maybe we can continue
This is
that
our
in the
current
next
election
answer.
law.
All right, so the next question, starting again with Bryson Behm. What is the most important role that the clerk fulfills? And by the way, we'll ask each candidate to hold the microphone quite close. I think you're doing fine, Mr. Gillie. But we had someone on the stream say they were having a little trouble hearing the candidates. So go ahead.
Perfect. Can you repeat that question one more
Yes,
time?
sorry about that. What is the most important role that the clerk fulfills?
The most important role that the clerk fulfills is ensuring that democracy locally is conducted in a secure and fair manner. The clerk is in charge of all the elections, but also is in charge of all the record keeping for the county. So we have the county contracts I'm in charge of, the county ordinances, county resolutions, county minutes, marriage licensing. We're going to make sure all those records are secure and easily attainable to the public. With the elections, we have to make sure it's a secure election and make sure all those hit points that could, produce election fraud or just distrust in elections, they're covered. And I have done that. I'm continuing to do that, like I mentioned before. And, we have a very secure election process. And, all of us are trained. And that's another big thing is too, like the clerk's in charge of training to make sure that our elections run smoothly and that our records are kept correctly.
All right, thank you. Same question to David R. Gillie. What is the most important role that the clerk fulfills?
It's hard to measure apples and oranges, but certainly elections is right up there. But that's not to overlook the unglamorous but very important role that you pointed out of keeping faithful records and making them accessible to the public, not only of county council meetings, but helping all citizens who put in grammar requests get prompt and full and truthful answers to their request to know what their public servants are doing. If you followed this election, there are some grammar requests going right now. The lieutenant governor has sent a letter in July to all the clerks saying, don't answer these grammar requests, people asking to know, to see the signatures that put me and my running mate, the governor, on the ballot. And she pointed to a court case that was off point because the court ruled on different types of records, voting records, how people, so I think that's very important. But the election is easily, arguably, just as important as keeping faithful records, possibly more so.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to the next question. Bryson Behm, how would you go about ensuring the integrity of elections in Cache County?
By ensuring, there we go. By ensuring the integrity of the elections here in the county, we are currently doing it. We have immense safeguards to this election, and all of us have had training to make sure that security is possible. I like to mention about the last administration with the 31 things that they did wrong. We have fixed all those security mishaps. From chain of custody, we make sure there's at least 2 people, if they're even close to a ballot, and have everything logged so we know exactly what's happening. If someone's going to enter the ballot processing center, they have to sign in and write exactly what they are doing there. Even me, the county clerk, every time I walk into that building, I have to sign in and log why I'm there. By entering that building, you can't go alone. You always have to have someone with you. It's under 24-hour surveillance. And we have to make sure when we do mail those ballots out, those signatures match. We have human eyes making sure that they can identify the correct signature, because a signature is very similar to a thumbprint. It's very unique. All of us have had FBI training when it comes to signature verification. I can probably make more money, on Antiques Roadshow determining what's a real Babe Ruth signature or not, but I decided to go into elections instead. We decided to secure our ballot boxes. We have a ballot box in every single municipality now. Those are under 24-hour surveillance. And every time someone goes to pick them up, it's always by 2, and someone has to log in exactly what time they went to the ballot box. And we have to make sure that we change our passwords monthly, quarterly, as many times as we can, and ensure the public that their vote will be counted and counted correctly.
All right, thank you. It's the same question to David R. Gillie. How would you go about ensuring the integrity of elections in Cache County?
First thing is administer the law as it stands, and as I intimated, it's beyond lamentable. It's 743 pages, 228,433 words. I've yet to meet a soul who's read it. I'm working my way through it, and I'm sure Bryson is too. But I argue that it is impossible. It is my duty as a clerk to follow everything in this massive tome, but I argue that it is impossible for me to look you in the eye as we stand now, and it's impossible for the clerk and say, I believe what just happened, and I'm certain that you do too. And until I can do that, I'm letting you down. And until we can do that, we're letting each other down in one of the most fundamental duties that we owe to each other. We have a government based on common consent, and when we can't assure ourselves of that legitimate common consent, we've let each other down. I lost my train of thought there. Oh, the county clerk has a special duty by statute, as does the county council. Every member of the county council is made a member of a board of canvassers. They are required by statute to make a certification to the lieutenant governor's office of something that is actually unknowable. And so I intend as county clerk to certify I've done X, Y, and Z, everything according to the book, but it is impossible for me or anyone else to know who got the ballots, who didn't, whether the people who should have gotten ballots got ballots, and most important of all, once the ballots were received, as you know, they're not read by human eyes, they're read by a computer, and we're not allowed by statute to read the code of what algorithms are in that computer.
All right, thank you. Our next question. Bryson Behm, Are there any changes you would like to see in how our elections are conducted?
Yeah, of course. You know, no process is perfect. I do want to add that 700-page election code I do know like the back of my hand, and I can assure you that our election is secure. What I would like to change to elections is, you know, I think there's a good number of constituents that would like to vote in person, have the ability to do that. We currently have only one voting in-person location. I like to add at least two more, so one on the south end, one on the north end, and one here in Logan, just to have more convenient for the people who'd like to vote in person. Through that, I wanted to make it more accessible to voting, and when people do come to vote in person, I kind of want to make it like the Chick-fil-A drive-through, like you're in, you're out. I just recently got back from a trip from Disneyland's, and it solidified my reason of why I absolutely hate standing in lines. So I want to make sure that there's hardly any lines when they come to voting in person. And, you know, we have what we call ballot tracks that we can track our ballot. I would like to expand that more to help constituents understand exactly where their ballot is in the process. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So the same question to David R. Gillie. Are there any changes you would like to see in how our elections are conducted?
Definitely. Again, my gold standard is what we've done for thousands of years and what we did for 250 years in this country, and that is we vote in our precincts, face to face with those whom we know who live in our precinct. We have election judges, two of them appointed for that election. They have no other office, no other responsibility. It's a moving target for bribery, just like an elector in the presidential election. You have one office and then you give it up. We all vote on paper ballots, and we all who want to watch the counting, canvassing, counting, tallying, and reporting. First step, though, I'm right with Bryson. I want to see people vote in person. His predecessor went the extra mile, and I intend to go the extra 2 miles in this regard. He posted a notice on the county clerk's page informing the citizens that the law right now allows you to fill out a form or simply put the clerk on notice and cease to receive a mail-in ballot and begin to begin to report to a precinct. I brought it with me. Anyway, that notice disappeared as soon as Mr. Behm took office, and links to that notice exist elsewhere in the county, for instance, on party pages. So the link is still alive. But if you use that link, it's a 401 or a 404, I can't remember which, as soon as he took office. So apparently he wasn't as eager as I am for citizens to know that. But my ultimate ambition is one polling post per precinct. The law says for every 5,000 people who request that, we must open another polling station. So my ambition as clerk would be to persuade the citizens of this county to opt out en masse, so that for every one of the 65,000 voters, that's, 13 polling places. But that's only the beginning. We need a polling place for every precinct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, Bryson Behm next. What challenges does the clerk face in running smooth elections?
There's so many challenges, I would say. I do want to talk about that form real quick. The reason why that form is not on the county website right now, it's because it's a Google form. Constituents are putting in their personal information, including driver's license numbers and the last 4 digits of their social security number, on a Google form. With that Lieutenant Governor's office audit, that was one of the biggest things that was really scaring them, was all that personal information on a Google form and not a secure form to put that information on. So that's why I took it out. Other challenges, other than just kind of the workflow, make things run smoothly, is just kind of answering everyone's questions and making sure the election is run smoothly. Every once in a while, the previous clerk sent out the wrong ballots. We had to double check to see if the right precincts are there. The previous clerk, again, forgot to do a logic and accuracy test, which is an audit of our counting machines. We got to make sure that all those audits are conducted and conducted correctly. We have done audit after audit after audit during that election. We have to do signature audits. We have to do the end of an audit with citizen participation and the logic and accuracy tests for those counting machines. And at the very end, we have our county council, the board of canvassers, certify that election after we conduct all those audits and given them those stats of the elections, and then tell them about any of the irregularities that might have happened.
Okay, thank you. David R. Gillie,
More
what
like
challenges does the clerk face in running smooth elections?
So more like this, you're saying, more horizontal like this. I think the challenges are innumerable, as Mr. Behm pointed out, and he's dedicated a lot of effort to mastering that, and I intend to do the same. At my final several years in the Navy, I supervise operations of 150 people, so I'm able to, I think I've established that I'm able to master a process and figure out how we do this and how can we improve it. The challenges, though, as I intimated before, are actually insuperable. It is not impossible to follow the law, but it is impossible as the law stands right now for me to look you in the eye, or for any of us to look any of us in the eye and say, I believe this and I'm certain you do too. And it is impossible to certify what the statute requires the clerk to certify and the board of canvassers to certify. So if I have your vote and I'm elected, I intend to certify what I can honestly certify. When you go to a court of law, you cross-examine the witness, and not just his or her veracity, but his or her ability to know that to which he or she is swearing. And it is logically impossible to know the 6 or 7 vulnerability spots. I'll mention the challenge because my hat's off to you. This spring, I sent 300 letters to 300 registered Cache County voters. I got the list from you. 100 of those came back undeliverable. So it is just figuring out keeping your voting list up to date when you don't vote in precincts is itself a Herculean task, and my hat's off to you because it's a never-ending task, especially in a college town. People moving all the time. It's a moving target. The answer is precinct voting, where everybody knows each other in the precinct. And again, that's only the first element. I listed the other elements for you.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll go to the next question for our candidates for Cache County Clerk. To Bryson Behm, what other roles besides elections does the clerk's office handle, and how would you fulfill those roles?
I kind of briefly touched about this in my opening statement. We are in charge of all the records of the county. So we conduct minutes for the council meetings. We're in charge of posting notices and agendas. We are in charge of posting ordinances and resolutions that the county council has passed, and we're in charge of archiving them forever. We are in charge of marriage licensing and conducting marriages if is needed. And we have in charge of business licensing for the unincorporated part of the county, not the entire county. It is very important to make sure that those ordinances are well kept. We have, numerous times made sure we contracted with an outside vendor to make sure that all of our historical records are preserved. We still have our Organic Act from 1857 or whenever when Cache County was incorporated. We have now made sure to digitize almost all of our records, and we have moved a lot of things online to make it more convenient for our constituents, because it's kind of a pain to walk all the way down to the county building and deal with government. So especially when you can do it with your feet, like on your computer. So that's why I continue digitizing and progressing through technology to make sure everything is well stored. We've also have a great digitizing online storage format here at the county, and Utah is a great place to store all of our historic documents. The state does a great job with our archives, so when we do run out of room, we can send it down to the state and make sure it's in the air-conditioned room to make sure those paper doesn't disintegrate, because with age you can see paper get yellow, wrinkly, orange, and all that gross stuff. So preserving, preserving, preserving.
All right, thank you. David R. Gillie, what other roles besides elections does the clerk's office handle, and how would you fulfill those roles?
I'm glad you mentioned that, and I think you'd agree with me that those are kind of the most unglamorous, the most unsexy, but when we think about it, so essential. The county clerk is an enabler of self-government. You recall one of the charges against King George in the Declaration was what? He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and in our case, most important, distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. By Bryson doing an excellent job of preserving those records right there, the county council and we who live here can refer to them at a moment's notice. That is vital. It's unsexy, but it's absolutely vital. And I applaud the job they do, and I intend to take that very seriously. Recall also that shortly after we became a territory, we had a disgruntled, please give me an idea of my time, I don't want to make the trapdoor go. We had an unsatisfied or disaffected federal judge who went back east and reported falsely that the governor had destroyed the records of the state. You cannot run a republic without records. That was false, but you recall it ignited an unnecessary kind of faux war. Recall another part of records, though, is records of what all the people who are your public servants throughout this state do. And if I, Sally, or I, John, come into Bryson, Behm, or David Gillie and say, I want to know how did the governor and the lieutenant governor manage to get on this primary, no one's been allowed to see the signatures. When I put myself on the ballot, the statute required I gather signatures and I turn them into the clerk's office. And I turn them in batches to make sure if they decide, well, I really don't like that one, I'll give you some more. But I asked them to see, and they said, oh, you can't see those. Every citizen of this county has a right to see how I got on the ballot. So that's a grammar request, one of many grammar requests.
Okay, thank you. We've now arrived at our last question. Although, no, the last prepared question, because it looks like we have some time if we have any audience questions, definitely. So we'll look for a closing statement, just open-ended, 2 minutes. Bryson, Behm.
I just want to start out with, now is not the time for on-the-job training. I am the only one on this stage that has conducted an election and done it securely. I've not been once, but 4 times. I know this job like the back of my hand, and I know the intricacies of this role. I'm running to do my job, the job I'm currently doing, and I'm doing one heck of a job right now. The previous clerk broke 31 laws when it came to election integrity and election security. I came in April and fixed it all up. We got to make sure that someone with the right experience knows how to run an election, or we might face the exact same issue that we did before. The previous clerk had no election experience, and it showed. Now, the clerk, like I said before, it's not the time for on-the-job training. This is a serious role, and someone who knows exactly how to do it needs to be the one who's clerk. I've been the chief deputy clerk. I've known even the back end of how we can secure our elections. I have written minutes for the county council. I've gone and digitized these documents. I know how to do this job, and I'm really good at it. I have a hard time tuning my own horn about it, but that's why I'm running. If I wasn't good at it, I wouldn't be on the stage. And I really hope to get your vote and secure this election correctly.
Okay, thank you. Closing statement next from
Yes.
David R. Gillie, just 2 minutes.
Yes. I've intimated I am very capable of figuring out processes and interviewing the people who are doing it, who work for me, and having them report, this is what we do and why, and asking questions of how to make it better. But as I mentioned from the start, my goal as county clerk is to master the statute as it stands, but at the very same time immediately begin persuading the citizens of this county that we owe each other something much better. I'm already collaborating with 2 of our state legislators because the clerk can't change the statute, but the clerk can use the position as a bully pulpit to persuade. We are failing each other egregiously. There is no logical possible way for me to certify or the Board of Canvassers to certify this election. We can certify only what we know, not what it is impossible and illegal for us to know. For instance, the algorithms that are in the computers that count the ballots. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from. I take the other responsibilities very seriously, grammar especially. You'll recall a few years ago we had an acting Secretary of State who, when she assumed office, immediately began a plan to make all of her public records private so that they could not be purviewed. And that's a great danger to Republican government. I intend to be a hound for grammar requests to make sure you get your response fully and truthfully and promptly. But with elections, my plan is first to persuade everybody to opt out of mail-in voting. Second, get us out of ERIC, which is a system that shares your voting information that you're not allowed to see with other states and with private nonprofits. Then to work with state legislators to get back to something much closer to 3 1/3 pages and miles away from 743 pages.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now we'll have closing statement by email from Allison Gillie, running for County Council. Allison says, "Thank you for allowing me this opportunity, and I'm sorry I couldn't be present with all of you." So that ends the prepared question portion of our candidate forum, our first panel. Let's take this opportunity to give a big hand to Bryson Behm and David R. Gillie. All right, we do have time for some questions from the audience. I'll bring my microphone to you so we can hear you if you had any questions from the audience. Right here first.
My name's Corbin Allen with the Herald Journal. One thing you mentioned is switching from what seems like 1 million pages to about 3. Obviously, there's a lot of exceptions. Obviously, there's a lot of exceptions and a lot of things that have to be included. How do we feel like 3 pages would be able to cover all of those different scenarios and things like that, if that were something to be implemented?
Okay, this seems directed to you, Mr. Gillie, so let's have your answer first, 2 minutes. And
I
then,
think so, and that's
Mr.
that's a
Behm
very
can
good question. This is a 200-fold increase. I defy anyone to even presume that it is a 200-fold improvement. But I'll grant your implication there that yes, we have several million in population, whereas then we had. Anyone want to guess? By the time we became a state, did we have 100,000? Okay, but it's a repeatable process. The precinct process is a replicable process. You just simply replicate it. And the most important thing about that is that you multiply the points of potential challenge and security while dividing the stakes. Right now we have a system where it's winner take all. The stakes are enormous. This state outspends Nevada per capita. Salt Lake County spends, I think, 2.5 times what Clark County spends, and that county is acknowledgedly built on vice. Okay, so yeah, you might get up to 10, but the idea when legislation becomes this prolix, the first thing you should ask is why. And when I read it, what I see is multiple ploys and counterploys by countering parties over the last couple of decades trying to get one over on each other. Citizenship is something we do with, not to each other. We need to remember that.
Okay, thank you. Bryson Behm, anything you'd like to say? 2 minutes.
Yeah, you can't make it through a page and a half anymore. Previously when it came to election security, was unheard of. People just said, okay, well, let's let Uncle Joe conduct our elections and trust him that he counts it correctly. Now that we have this technology that we know how these ballots are tallied, our ballot tabulation equipment is a fancy Scantron machine. It literally just scans a bubble. With that, I have met with the Clark County Clerk's office before, and I've met, their election officials. The reason why we spend more is because we want to secure more. It's not because, we're wasting money making sure, the right person wins. We're making sure that the election is secure. There's so many things that Clark County has come to Utah to understand how we conduct our elections. So when we do conduct by mail, which is we were one of the first states to do it about 10 years ago, no one had an issue with it until now. So these machines are secure. I'm more than happy to give a tour. I've given not millions of tours, but hundreds of tours to show the security of our elections. And it's not that we don't, or trying to hide it, we welcome it. But a lot of people who are complaining about this election security don't show up to the tours. Don't ask us the questions. But they get on the Facebook comment section and say how bad it is.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? I think we see some more hands. Let's start here.
Thank you so much for correcting those 31 problems. That's great. I appreciate that. Can you riff on our federal elections? Why do you think that happened at the presidential level?
All right, start with Bryson Behm, and then
Yeah.
give David or Gillie a chance.
I think it started with COVID, when we all had to go to vote by mail. There was a lot of these states that have never conducted vote by mail, or a very small portion have. I know, for example, I've met with some election officials in North Carolina. So when they asked us, like, we were doing vote by mail, they had no idea how they were going to do it. They do have an absentee mailing process where a lot of those had to opt in, while Utah had to opt out. I think it was just a lot of, it was scary. It was a new voting process, and people were unsure about it. There's a lot of different, states are in control of their own elections. There's a lot of different laws as well. For example, Pennsylvania, they weren't allowed to count their mail-in ballots until election day or start tabulating them. We tabulate your ballot as soon as we get the ballot mailed back to us or in a drop box. So by the time you get to the election results, you have the majority of the election results by 9 p.m. on election day. We don't know the results, but we start processing immediately. So I think it was just a lot of misinformation and miscommunication about that issue was kind of like the riff when it came to the presidential election. Luckily, Utah, we're a pioneer of vote by mail. A lot of states looked at us saying, how do you do your process? And we more than welcome to show them the process ourselves. There's been a lot of states, Secretary of States, election officials that have visited Utah to understand how we do that process.
Okay, thank you. Let's get perspective from David R. Gillie on this.
Can you reformulate it?
Yeah.
I was just
I know you were talking about the last federal
yeah,
election.
the federal election, what set that off, not the state, but the federal election and the problems, for example, in Georgia, and that the election was stolen. Do you think the election was stolen at the federal level?
Again, it is unknowable, and that is an impermissible catastrophe. It is unknowable. We do know that there are thousands of hours of sworn affidavits before courts, county councils, legislative commissions. We know that there are thousands of pages of sworn affidavit. Sworn testimony is subject to perjury. And that's why. When you have massive election fraud, you can't know whether you have an acting public servant with authority to act. That is a calamity beyond measure in a republic. If you follow Fred Hayes' Substack, he made a similar point regarding Utah. Because it is unknowable, again, we're a pioneer. We pioneered into the abyss of mail-in ballots. We were one of the pioneers. I should say we. I wasn't here then, but now I'm a Utahn, so I'm saying we. I'm in this with you, and I'm trying to make it better. and I'm motivated to do that. We pioneered into the abyss of unknowability. And mentioned logic and accuracy testing. Who remembers the Volkswagen emission scandal several years ago? Okay. What the West Virginia students who discovered that proved, which we all should have known if we understand how a computer works, is that logic and accuracy testing is to voting what Volkswagen emissions testing is to EPA emission standards. Logic and accuracy testing demonstrates that this machine is capable of correctly reading and correctly tallying filled in circles. It is incapable of and not designed to tell you what this computer is programmed to do, or the algorithm by which it is programmed in any given instance, or reprogrammed in the next instance to multiply or divide every vote by, or to flip, or anything else. And it is against the law in this monstrosity for you or...
Okay, thank you. We had a couple other hands here. Okay.
It seems that one of our candidates is saying that they would be able to certify an election after its completion from this county. Another saying they would not be able to certify an election from this county under any circumstance. So my question is, for both of you, what would happen in the circumstance under which Cache County's election is not certified? What's the next step in the election process here in Utah?
Let's direct this first to Bryson Behm, 2 minutes.
Yeah. First, the county clerk can't certify an election. It's the Board of Canvassers. In this case, it's the county council who votes to certify that election. So the county clerk conducts the election, administers the election, gives the results and all the audit information to the county council, and then the county council then decides to certify the election or not. In past, there's a lot of county council members that have came to audits, have came to the ballot processing center to understand the process more so they can feel more comfortable certifying the election. A lot of these county council members don't come in blind, not knowing exactly what happened. I am grilled to the masses about the election, even during the Board of Canvassers meeting, which is a publicly recorded meeting. And I stand there at the pulpit and have a county council grill me exactly what happened. If it's not certified, it will then go to the state, and then the state will conduct, an investigation to see why it wasn't certified. It's very similar to what happened in Iron County. Just recently, Iron County, the post office, we had a little snafu when it comes to the postmark date, and the Iron County Commission didn't feel confident to certify the election at that time. After that, they conducted an investigation about, the cure process, and the county commission was more involved, and the state helped with that process. And then, about 2 weeks after that, that election was certified. So I guess long story short, if it's not certified, we audit, and prove that it should be certified. And if it keeps going further and further, the state might most likely will get involved in that process, because it goes from county certification to state certification to national certification when it comes to federal elections. So.
Okay, thank you. Same question to David R. Gillie. Do you need a rephrase of the question?
No, I think that's very good. And the point is well taken. The county clerk's duty by statute is to certify that he conducted the election according to the statute. It's the county councils, each member of which is a member of the Board of Canvassers by statute, duty to certify the election. And again, we're asking them by statute right now to certify what they cannot know. They can know only what they saw and what they were allowed to know. And that, again, goes to logic and accuracy testing, anything else. Yes, I certify, I saw it. This machine is capable of reading these ballots. I was not allowed to see I was not allowed to be there when we introduced the trusted build. We do not know what was on that thumb drive that went into it, et cetera. We're not allowed by statute to know. It's like there's an old Soviet bitter bitter joke from the days of the Soviet Union. A fellow shows up to vote, and the man hands him a sealed envelope and gives him the box and tells him to put it in. And he goes to open it. The man says, "You can't open that." "Why not? It's my ballot." "It's a secret ballot," he explains. "Every time we cast a ballot under our current statute, it is a secret ballot from the caster. It cannot be known," and from almost everybody in the process. If the governor and lieutenant governor happens to have a secret password, has recently been revealed in Colorado, okay, we don't know that about Utah. But very few people are allowed by statute to know what the algorithms are and when they're changed and how they're changed. So it's therefore unknowable. As a clerk, I would persuade, to my best ability, the county council to recognize what they cannot know, certify what they can certify, and certify it is unknowable whether what just happened is anything like common consent. And until we repent, civic repentance, and get back to something like this, we're all letting each other down.
Okay, thank you. One or two more questions? We have over here and then over here. Okay.
Got to get the sun out of my eyes. My question is about voter rolls. In Utah, you can choose to have your name withheld. So the rolls are never transparent. And this can be a problem if we're trying to clean up the voter rolls. What would you gentlemen propose? I know you can't change the law, but what is your ideal?
Let's switch the order on this one. David R. Gillie first.
It's an insuperable task.
Yeah.
It's an insuperable task. I know your predecessor had quite a volunteer council, or quite a volunteer club, whatever it were, volunteers. My wife was one of them. Lillian, raise your hand. And I know some of you were. But it is an insuperable task. I mentioned the anecdote, and it's more than an anecdote. I think it's dispositive to a certain degree that this last spring I sent out 300 letters to the latest addresses that we had for registered voters in this county. Over the next several weeks, 100 of them came back undeliverable. The fact that it took several weeks tells me, and again, it may be a wrong assumption, it may be completely wrong, but my assumption is the postman really tried. So, and the answer is, I'm sorry to say, as I see it, only amending the statute. So first, volunteers and do the best they can, but you'll never get there. And that's part of the problem with Phil Lyman's suit against the governor and the lieutenant governor. There's a tremendous conflict of interest there guarding his own election and his own eligibility for election, but refusing to disclose the signatures of those who got him on the ballot. I would want every one of you to peruse the signatures that got me on the ballot. I'm running unaffiliated, by the way, so remember to vote David R. Gillie. Don't look for a D or an R or a C or anything else. Look for my name, David R. Gillie.
Okay, thank you. Bryson Behm, same question.
Yeah, so there's a difference when it comes to the privatization of your voter registration. So on the voter registration form itself, online and physical, there is a box that marks private. So private means I don't want to be contacted by campaigns or anybody who could request a voter information request for that. Withheld means completely no one can touch it. Usually withheld voters are law enforcement, sometimes elected officials. So someone who is disgruntled with them can't go and find their address, or so they can show up at the doorstep. What we do, it's by statute that every month the county clerk certifies that the voter registration rolls are accurate and updated. So just recently, in August 1st, I signed the affidavit and sent it to the lieutenant governor's office. It is also required by statute that we do what we call an NCOA list, which is a national change of address, which we do about 9 weeks before each election. The reason why a lot of your undeliverables happened was that NCOA list wasn't being updated. And then after that, when I got into office, we updated and cleaned up the voter rolls. This last election, we had about a 2% undeliverable rate, 3%, 4% undeliverable rate, which is really good, especially when you're living in a college county. Really good is about 2%. We're killing it. I have always been ensuring that our voter rolls are cleaned up. We just recently had a voter roll audit, and there was 0 findings. We have always kept updated. I don't know about the previous clerk's administration about cleaning up voter rolls, but as soon as I got in, our voter rolls were up to date and cleared.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Last question here, I believe.
My question has to do with the 2022 election in Cache County. I believe Mr. Behm was a staffer for a previous clerk, Jess Bradfield. During that election, there was a write-in campaign for county executive. And it's my understanding that when the counting took place with that, there was some first of all, the then clerk, Jess Bradfield, publicly endorsed the current county executive, which I think is unethical. Maybe I'd like your comments on that, and hope that you won't do that, either of you won't do that. But the question I have for you has to do with the counting of that county executive race in 2022. It's my understanding from discussions I've had with some county council members who were attempting to certify that race, that they wanted to see the actual ballots because there was an anomaly in the data. The data showed that Mr. Ensign, who was the write-in candidate, had 45% overall, and the winner had 55% or so. And the question is this: why was it that 90% or 9 out of 10 provisional ballots that came in that election went for the incumbent? Maybe Mr. Behm can answer that.
All right, Bryson Behm, we'll give you first crack at that one.
I guess to answer your first part of the question, I'm not going to be endorsing any candidate since, I am administering in charge of the election. And also, I guess to kind of double down, I am a candidate for this election. So I'm not going to physically touch a ballot or run ballots like I have in the past. I have a very trustful staff in that, and I can administer it from afar and make sure everything is running well. But I'm going to make sure that any irregularities from me touching a ballot or being part of the counting process won't happen. With the writing campaign, there's what we call an adjudication process, and it's where human eyes look at the voter intent of that writing candidate. I can't look at the data right off the bat to understand those provisional ballots, but I'm assuming when we went through that adjudication process that that bubble wasn't filled, or if someone wrote in not Mark Ensign in that write-in box. When it comes to voter intent and understanding about who gets that write-in vote, it doesn't matter if the name is spelled incorrectly or if just like Mark E. We're gonna count that vote for that write-in candidate. I have to look at the provisional ballots and understand, but my assumption and most likely is they didn't vote for him, period. Or when they went through the adjudication process, the voter intent wasn't clear.
All right, same question to you, David R. Gillie. So
Much
that's-
less capable of speaking to this because I was not
Okay.
involved, but I can speak to it only theoretically. When you see 90% of one type of ballot going for one candidate, the law of gross numbers or the law of large numbers tells you we have a problem here. And the bigger problem is that what the problem is cannot be known under our current system. The answer is precinct voting, precinct counting, precinct canvassing, precinct tallying, because it distributes the risk to every member potentially of that precinct and drastically divides the stakes. We have the opposite now. When we plunged into mail-in vote and computer voting, we assured ourselves that we would never, under a perfect storm, be able to look each other in the eye as fellow citizens and say, yep, I'm confident. This earns my respect. keeps my respect for me and for you, my confidence in me, my confidence in you as a citizen. We're failing, and that we can overcome that only by getting our legislators to get something back closer to something like this. But in the meantime, every one of us can opt out of mail-in voting, and every one of us can advocate for getting Utah out of ERIC, and the clerk can argue tirelessly before the county council and with state legislators. We need to have a massive act of civic repentance and do what we owe each other, and that's to have real elections.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all your great questions. Appreciate it. Let's give a big hand for Bryson Behm, David R. Gillie again. Thank you. All right, we appreciate you. Sure. A moderate hand for the moderator. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll have a 10-minute break, then we'll start our next panel. So stay around for that.